Welcome to everyone who has joined us. We are thrilled to have you here for this fireside conversation with Michael Fassnacht, who is a visionary leader, both in business and in civic life here in Chicago. We are hosting this event as a partnership between Crain's Business Chicago and the University of Chicago Graham School. My name is Seth Green, and I'm the dean here at the University of Chicago Graham. And we are thrilled to have this conversation. And I want to just provide the briefest of context on why we are having this conversation. It is because Michael is going to be one of the key leaders in a joint initiative between our two institutions that aims to help executives better understand, shape, and engage with the region's economic and community development. The program, which will start this upcoming academic year in October, has three specific goals to help inspire executives to understand and confront the systemic issues that face our region, to investigate the approaches and solutions that can help our region to thrive, and then to connect our faculty and Crain's journalists with the next generation of business leaders in our region that can help ensure a bright future. And I'll just share that the way we approach this is by bringing three lenses together: an academic lens with some of the best faculty in the world who are looking at these issues, not just in Chicago, but around the world with comparative approaches to Chicago, with Crain's journalists that are willing to go beyond the headlines and go deep into the stories that they cover, and then with people in the practice world, Michael being a prime example, who are thinking deeply and rigorously about these issues and how to apply solutions. Last year, you can see some of the amazing people that we brought together from across our region. And this year, we are adding a new feature, which is we're going to have a weaver function, we call it, where we have all of these ideas coming together by someone who really understands all of these worlds. And that person is indeed Michael, who has led across the business, civic, and social sectors and is able to see through that work how these different areas connect. And so with that, I want to jump into our fireside conversation with Michael. I'm going to spotlight him here on the screen. Let me see. Michael, I want to get you up on our screen here. There we go. Michael, you are joining me. Perfect. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
In so many ways, Michael, you are not only an advisor and distinguished instructor in CLC, but you are also a role model for it. You're a business leader who has been deeply involved in the very topic that we're discussing: understanding, engaging, and shaping the big issues facing our region. To lay the table for the rest of our discussion, can you just talk maybe 3 to 4 minutes about how you originally got passionate about the city's future, how you came to lead World Business Chicago, and maybe tell everyone what you're up to now as you continue your leadership in a new dimension for our region and beyond?
Yeah, thank you, Seth, for having me here, participate and share a little bit of my perspectives. I like to always look at professional careers in chapters, and I'm now, I would say, in my 5th chapter. My first chapter really started at Lufthansa in Frankfurt. Some of you might be surprised. I was born in Germany, despite having almost no accent anymore. I really grew up in Germany, started my career at Lufthansa in marketing and strategy and technology, moved to San Francisco in 2000, started a tech firm, focused on the marketing sector and customer data, sold it to Oracle 5 years later, and then moved almost reluctantly to Chicago because I didn't know we wanted to leave the West Coast. We had 2 young kids. So I came in 2006 and then fell in love with the city from day one. And then I had some people would say, a pretty good career in the advertising marketing world. First as a global health strategy of one of the largest advertising firms, then as a CEO for over 10 years. Got slowly more and more involved in the civic world in Chicago, and then joined Mayor Lightfoot's team early 2020, both as the first ever chief marketing officer for the city, but as well then as the CEO of World Business Chicago, which most of you know is the economic development for the city of Chicago. Did it until the end of last year, worked as well with Mayor Johnson for almost 9 months, and that just joined 5 months ago, Clayco, which is one of the largest privately held companies here in Chicagoland, really focused on building the future of North America through architectural design, construction, and real estate development. continue to be still very civically engaged. I think I'm now on 7 boards, and continue to function as a board member of World Business Chicago and now intersect the statewide economic development organization. Love the city and just love staying involved. That's when you said, and then Jim Kirk from Crain reached out, I said, I'm happy to be involved and provide my perspectives and continue to learn.
Well, we are really grateful that you did. And I want to jump into the curriculum and some of your observations that are running through it, because the thesis behind the Chicago Leadership Circle is this is a critical moment for our region, that business has a consequential role to play, and that there are win-win opportunities. And I want to start with why this moment is critical. And maybe I can ask you, and we have the DNC coming, so this is a big moment in many ways. What are the biggest opportunities and challenges in front of our region in this moment?
Yeah. So let me just answer first why I think this program is so important for business leaders. Yeah. I believe you cannot be a successful business leaders in 2024 if you're not as well as civic leader. Because you don't understand today's society, your community you're living in. You're not able to attract talent, manage talent. You're not able to attract capital or really be an outstanding long-term business leader. That's why I'm passionate about a program like this. I think the opportunities are large. I think for Chicago and Chicagoland, I think all our fundamentals, the diversity of industry, the talent we have, I think climate change will be net positive for Chicagoland, because I think that more people will move in, because we are the most climate resilient region, despite the challenges that global climate change will bring. So all the fundamentals are very strong. On the other hand, I think we are facing a new world where I think the 3 forces that create civic life, which is the public world, means elected officials, the civic world, foundation, philanthropic, nonprofit, and the business world, are probably more disconnected than ever before. But ultimately, to drive real long-term change, you need the trifecta of the elected officials, of civic leaders, and business leaders working together without disagreeing always on everything. But without these 3 worlds working together towards something common, we cannot really maximize, I think, the potential we have in Chicago.
And so I'd love to dig into that argument, Michael, and why business is critical. Because you might say, well, it's obvious that, public policy is critical and government plays a huge role in shaping all of these contexts and the big decisions. And you might look at the nonprofit sector and say their mission is to do so. But let's talk about why business in particular. And maybe one way to do that is you can give us some examples of where you've seen business really play a profound role in shaping our region. And maybe that's from World Business Chicago or beyond, because you've obviously seen these issues from multiple contexts, from the public side and from the private side.
I mean, I'm public, but I'm a capitalist. And I do believe in the power of capitalism as long as it's correctly regulated. Ultimately, we will not change and address the social challenges, inequality we have in our city without economic opportunities across all 77 neighborhoods. Because we all know the talent in our city is equally distributed, the economic opportunities is not. If we look at, let's say, Inglewood, the unemployment rate is on average north of 20%. For young Black men, is over 30. We will not address the massive challenge we have without having as well economic opportunities and growth, and have an unemployment rate like in Lincoln Park, which is 2%. That's why only businesses can long-term build economic platforms. And a very concrete example is, if you look at the last 48 hours in the media, Mars, which is headquartered here, Mars Snacking, acquired Kellanova, which is also headquartered here. That's a good story for us. Mars acquired a company of the UK called Hot Chocolate. They're building their first stores in Chicago. When they come to the US, they looked at where should we move to. They say, we're coming to Chicago. They will create 500 jobs the next 12 months. They could get gone anywhere else. So we as a business are not continuing to be attractive for people, for companies and capital. We cannot build a brighter future for everyone across all 77 neighborhoods.
So you've argued that business is critical in a pivotal moment for the region. And so I'd love to dig in a little bit, because another part of this curriculum is about the how. Meaning, if you are an executive out there and you're thinking, I want to play a role, how can leaders really get involved in shaping these issues based both on your own experience and also based on what you've observed? Because after you yourself got engaged, you then played a role in engaging lots of other leaders in this public-private partnership for regional success.
I think probably three areas where I think business leader can get engaged. First, just get engaged, meaning join a board, volunteer. It does matter. I had a fortune that had some mentors like in 2012, 2013, who kind of, oh, you have to join the Chicago Public Library Foundation board, which was one of my first boards. So I just joined boards. I had no idea what I was doing, what it was all about. And I had people, and I think that's unique about Chicago. People are helping you along that journey. So just show up and get engaged. Second, I think a key factor is I try to acknowledge my ignorance every single day. Chicago is a very complex, complicated story, history, city, and just learn every day. In my previous role, I rarely visited a neighborhood south of Roosevelt or west of Ashland. So let's be curious and acknowledge the ignorance we have. And then third, as a business leader, who are the partners I work with? Who do I spend money with? What talent do I hire? Do I just a talent that we always have hired, or do I look at different colleges, different places to kind of diversify our population? So I think that's the three areas. First, be engaged. Second, be curious and learn. And third, using the instruments you have as business leaders on the spending and the hiring that really make a difference.
And Michael, the first question we've gotten in the chat for you is about how to make the case for Chicago. And so you are someone who played a big role in trying to market Chicago and bring companies here. You mentioned a couple of big wins just in the last 48 hours. When you're making that case for why Chicago over the competitors, what's the core case about what differentiates us in the marketplace?
I think probably three areas. One is still the diversity of our industry. Our industry is still very, very strong. When I was fortunate under my leadership, both in Chicago, over 400 companies moved to Chicago. So it's still there's we don't have just one industry that we're relying on. We probably never get too hot in a cycle, but also never too cold. So that's very important, I think. We have the talent. We have the talent, we have diverse talent. People want to. Second, we have an amazing city. I think if you look at all the demographic data, young people still want to move here. We have a lot of young people in. Our biggest challenge demographically is we're losing, especially in our Black population, on the lower socioeconomic level, which is a problem. We have to think about how to keep them. But so I think our diversity of our talent is, and then third as well, I do believe like the fundamentals, like our climate resiliency, the power we have, I mean, electric power we have is important. So if you talk with people who are making these decisions, the key thing is to make them come visit, because once they see it and they meet people, see the richness we have, we always have, I think, a strong case to make. And I think companies make decisions every day that are really kind of pro Chicago, despite the fundamental challenge we do have, and I don't want to ignore.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about those, and maybe from a positive perspective, in the sense that, you mentioned some of those challenges earlier. What do you see as the biggest opportunities to overcome those challenges? So if you could, wave a wand and say, here are three things we need to do as a region to really improve our reputation, our ability to engage, what would allow us, even as we're winning, to win more and attract more companies to see Chicago as their destination?
I think first it is about, I think, economic opportunities, because our biggest challenge is economic inequality. If we look at the wealth gap between Caucasian residents and Black residents, is horrendous. If we look at the the lifespan, it's between the best and worst zip code is almost 20 years. So we have to acknowledge first there's significant challenge of inequality across our neighborhoods, and they're not by accident. They're driven by decades of unjust, racist policies. And I think even as business leaders like me, we have to acknowledge this and learn about this. What happened? What happened in the housing policy? What was redlining in the 60s and 70s? I did not know what it was, even the term redlining. So I think we have to learn that. So I do believe partly the ignorance of quite a few business leaders about all these facts It's not by coincidence where we are today. But the opportunity, on the other hand, I think the talent we have in the city, in every neighborhood, the people I meet are super passionate, highly trained. So we have to reverse that. So it's the economic platforms we have to create, but also kind of the narrative about what are the challenges and how we address them. And knowledge, I do believe in the power of knowledge and learning more.
When on that note, the first question we have in the chat is from Grace Blue, and she asks, how is Chicago positioned to capitalize on emerging trends in technology advancement? Obviously, artificial intelligence being the greatest, but there's also, as you know, related topics like quantum and biotechnology and some of these other big economic levers of the future. And then a related question that she has, what industries do you see coming into and growing in Chicago in the future?
So if you look at the probably 10, 12 years ago, I think it was now Governor Pritzker who realized we are not a global hub for technology innovations. That really started 1871. And hopefully most of you know 1871, not, I think that's one of the areas we all need to know about. Then I was part of the pitch for Amazon HQ2, now 7 years ago. Maybe didn't win, and we realized Penny Pritzker, a lot of other leaders, Chris Gladman, they started P33 to realize we have to be more thoughtful and concerted efforts to really make Chicago a global innovation hub. A lot of initiatives. So if we look at the data, venture funding, unicorns, which are startups above $1 billion market, we really have done really much better last 3 or 4 years. Governor Pritzker, one of the sectors he focuses on is quantum computing. You saw an announcement 2 weeks ago with the Quantum Park at the 88 or the old steel site, which is a tremendous win for our city and region. So I think in overall life sciences with Portal Innovations and John Flavin, a lot of momentum, the life sciences numbers going up. So I think we are probably now, if you look at the ranking globally, top 10, top 15 in technology innovation. 10 years ago, we were like not even number 30th. And I think one unlocker is as well, we always liked about Chicago. I'm a big believer we have to look at Chicagoland as one global super region. We don't compete with Schaumburg or Naperville. It's one region. We're like at one economic powerhouse. That's a key unlocker, I think, for all these.
Dave Flowers says, we used to have the trifecta, business, civic, and nonprofit communities working together like no other city in the world. Yet it seems to me from the corporate side, today's leaders are not as engaged, or even more importantly, are not insisting that their emerging leaders get engaged in the community. Why do you think this has happened?
So I get that asked often, and my thesis is might be slightly controversial because I look at Millennium Park. Millennium Park, people we all love. It's a phenomenal accomplishment where this trifecta worked together. But that effort, it took 5 to 10 years. While we focused on this amazing effort, we didn't do anything with the South and West side. So the trifecta worked because mostly white men made the decisions in smoke-filled rooms what to do. And now each of these groups are much more heterogeneous, much more diverse, much more fragmented, much more complicated to come to some consensus. So the good old days, yes, you got certain things done, but there was a very narrow lens on downtown and one particular segment of the population. So now our challenge is harder. How can we build this trifecta in a much more fragmented, with much more different, much more diverse leader and much more heterogeneous makeup? That's my thesis.
And I mean, can I ask, Michael, as a follow-up, do you think the pandemic, the work from home, the way that we're kind of moving away from place-based, is that a global phenomenon affecting us? And I'll just give you an example. I was talking to a business leader. He was on a call talking about Chicago. He realized as they were talking on Zoom that these were all leaders of different companies that are headquartered here, but he was the only one in the 10-person room that was here. One person was in Cabo, one person was in, the Aspen area. And he realized, this is an issue happening, but even though everyone cares, they may feel more removed than they did a generation ago. I mean, your point with, notwithstanding, so to be clear, that's in addition, I'm just curious how you think that plays out into this factor.
I think it's a very good question. I mean, when I worked at World Business Chicago, then the mayor's office as well, during the pandemic, I was in the office and I got always great advice from business leaders who were completely somewhere else and told me what was happening in Chicago. But no, I think that's why, I mean, I'm in the office. I'm right now in the loop. I think, and I probably don't answer it, but I think the biggest concern and the opportunity is that, especially if we look at the wealthy, let's say 1% in Chicago, they have 2, 3, 4, 5 residences. They lost the emotional connectivity to a physical space. It's not just a Chicago problem, it's any urban centers. The only time when they have a true connectivity to an urban center is when they have children, when the children are in school. So our job is no harder. So I focus a lot on the next generation, the 30s and 40s, to make sure they have an emotional connectivity to the city of Chicago. And you can only have this really long term if you spend as well enough time here. But sometimes you make it difficult for the next generation to get involved. It feels so abstruse, so complicated. That's why this program is so important. It gives you the tools how to unlock that. Because what still I think is unique as an immigrant, I lived in a lot of cities around the world. Chicago is still the most welcoming city that I've ever lived in. If you want to help, get engaged, come in, help. But I always say this, and then I start like this metaphor of the science fiction movies where the elite lives in the spaceships above and we all work. There's some truth in that. And then I'm very, very concerned about that.
Francie Harrington asks, how do we motivate Chicago companies and executives who are currently passive to participate and financially support civic engagement? And I'll just acknowledge Francie knows a lot about this, having been one of the key leaders in this movement. But, how do we do it?
So two answers for this. I think it's in your self-interest to be engaged, because you cannot build an amazing company if your city is not successful. And second, it's the right thing to do. And then personally, it's much more fun. It's much more interesting. The people I met the last 5 years are some of the most fascinating, interesting people I've ever met. I think your life is so poor if you're just in your neighborhood, just in your socio-demographic bubble. It is a poor life. But it's all in the self-interest of a company, because if you want to attract the best talent, have a great culture, you want the physical space where people feel safe, welcome, included. And young people want a diverse, enriching, engaged culture. So it's both self-interest and it's the right thing to do.
If you were talking to a college student who's about to graduate, and in this case, they're asking about, they're enrolled in an engineering discipline, the question is, how can they become part of Chicago's future?
So I just talked yesterday with someone who just finished from college, and I said, and I gave her like, there's so much happening in Chicago. So she wants to go into UI, UX, like customer experience area. Hey, here are 3 organizations who do events. You need to show up. Don't just stay on LinkedIn and reach out to people. Show up in person, meet people. I connected with 2 or 3 people. Very simple. Show up, get engaged, and there's so much happening in the city. That's why you live in Chicago. Get engaged. I saw Nora Gaynor is here. I mean, what the Art Institute is doing, amazing program. There's so much happening. Get engaged, get informed, and show up.
So we only have a few more minutes, Michael. We have a big convention next week. What's the story that you think we want to tell about Chicago right now? I know that there's another story happening next week for a political party, but I think from where I sit, there's also a big opportunity to showcase our city. As you think about it, what's the story that we want to tell about our city? What's the story that that you see that's not being told adequately, that we can kind of close a maybe misperception gap about our region?
I would like to say, the reality of Chicago is much better than its brand. And I would say some of the New York, no, New York's the opposite. The New York brand is much better than reality. But so I hope that people who come here and have been here, they see this is a vibrant city. It's a beautiful city. It's a diverse city. Yes, we have our challenges, but you want to be part of it. You want to spend time here. I'm very superficial on this. I looked at the weather forecast. The weather forecast looks great for next week, which is half the success. So I want that they say, wow, I met so many great people, and look at the lake, look at downtown, look at the neighborhoods, that they feel what kind of a rich life we have here in Chicago. That's what I want to see.
Final question. We have a very exciting year ahead for fellows of the Chicago Leadership Circle. We'll make sure to put in the chat the application for those who are interested in applying by end of night tonight, because we have our deadline today. Talk a little bit about what you hope to learn yourself, because I think one of the things that's so inspiring about this is when we talk to you about playing this lead instructor role and helping to weave together the curriculum, we not only talked about what you could contribute, which is immense, but you also shared that you were really excited because you wanted to learn alongside the fellows. And so I thought it'd be a great way to close today by hearing, even amidst your visionary leadership, what do you hope to learn from this experience of being with the fellows over this upcoming year?
So I look at Chicago always as a city of stories. And we have 2.8 million people who are storytellers, and they have millions of stories.
Yeah.
Traditionally, we only focus on a small segment of storytellers and stories. So whenever I meet new people, and like in this program, I want to know them as storytellers and their stories that they have. Because everyone who either grew up here or moved here or works here, they all have their own stories. And well, that's what Chicago is ultimately. Yes, it's the physical infrastructure, but ultimately 2.8 million people who live here create Chicago every single day, reinventing it every day. And that's what I'm fascinated, intrigued by.
Well, I want to end by saying a huge thank you to our partners at Crain's. Thank all the audience for coming out on a Friday afternoon. And most of all, Michael, thank you. We are talking about how Chicago is a city that has been built by people. And I can't imagine a person that has been more meaningful to this city at this moment. And to be able to lead with the kind of vision that you have of bringing that diversity that we share in this city together to really harness it and to have a new chapter that is even greater now that we're beyond the good old boys and we can have this opportunity, right? But as you say, it's not easy to do. It's not necessarily with the same structures. And so that's why this work that we're doing around the fellowship is so important, because we want to design a structure in which all of that can hopefully thrive. Thank you. Thank you all for being with us. And let's hope for a great opportunity to tell our story as a city next week. Have a good afternoon,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.